Self-service, if I like, I order twice. Hibachi, got the gravy on the rice. Rolling in Mexico,
Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome into another edition of the Steelers Q&A on Super Bowl Sunday. And I've got a special guest with me. It's none other than our very own Brian Anthony Davis. Brian, welcome in. It's been a while since you've been on the Q&A, but good to have you. How you feeling this Super Bowl Sunday?
It is my national holiday. I love this day. I don't care if it's the Eagles. I don't care if it's the Chiefs. The only way I'm really going to complain is if ISIS is playing. So, and
Right.
I'm glad they're not fielding a team.
Yeah.
But anyways, I love this day. I've watched highlights like crazy all week long. Been watching America's Game. I love the old America's Game highlights, especially when my hero Tom Selleck's doing one of them.
Yes.
Tom Selleck did, I think, 2006. So here I'm watching 2006 and hearing Tom Selleck. And then Bruce Willis does a couple from the 70s. And I'm like, yes. So no, I love this day. I love everything about it. And getting ready to celebrate it. And we're almost to game time. And Jeremy called me today and he's like, what are we going to do? I mean, I'm doing a show today, but don't really want to do it during the game unless you want me to. And I'm like, no, you're not doing it during the game. I'm not doing that to you. In fact, I'll go on with you. We'll have some fun for about a half an hour. We say a half an hour, but you know me, we'll go for 90 probably. So
well, I can't let you do that this time because I've got some really good food cooking over in the kitchen. So the smells will drive me away from the camera before anything else will. But
I love it.
Hey, I mean, it's another Super Bowl Sunday without the Steelers. But like you said, we're just here for some good football. It's the last game of the season. Let's enjoy it. I don't know if you're rooting for one specific team or another, but there's definitely some good football on the horizon. I'm excited just to get that going.
Here's the thing. I'm rooting for a clean game. And if the Chiefs win this game and win it clean, I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. In fact, I will have much respect. I think the Eagles are the better team here on paper.
Yeah.
But, they definitely have that. They have that certain je ne sais quoi. They know how to come through. They also know how to come through with help. And I just don't want controversy. That's it. It's like when it's a holiday or just any time and you're just relaxing on the couch and you say, kids, just don't fight.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear fighting. So I want clean game. I'm going to be happy with whoever wins it. I just don't want to have something artificial to talk about. I want to talk about great football afterwards.
Exactly. That's what I've been saying is I want to see greatness. Whatever form that takes, I want to see it. I want to see great quarterbacking. I want to see great offensive line play and Saquon Barkley ripping off big gains. I want to see great defense. I want to see big plays. I agree with you 100%. I don't want to see the refs interfering with it. I want to see a clean football game, but I just want to see some greatness in this game today. And I'm excited for it. And as Steeler fans, we have just a vault of greatness from Super Bowl Sunday to go back to. So, Brian, let me ask you this. What's your favorite Steelers Super Bowl memory of all time?
Yeah, gosh, this is tough because they're all so special that I remember. And I remember the first Steelers Super Bowl I remember is Super Bowl 13. And so 1979, the 78 season, but there's nothing really that sticks out in that where I was as cognizant as I should have been. Like, there's some great memories from that game. One of my favorites is from that game, the lead up to it with Thomas Hollywood Henderson, who, if you don't know much about Hollywood Henderson, he was the villain against the Steelers in this game, saying, the Steelers Bradshaw couldn't spell cat if you supplied the C and the A. He had a dirty hit on Bradshaw in that game. And then Franco goes in the huddle. Soft-spoken Franco says, give me the ball. No, it's a passing down. Give me the ball. It was like a 3rd and 10 or something. And he took it 20 yards for the score. And he was so fired up and angry. But Thomas Hollywood Henderson was also admits in his book, one of the best football books I've ever read was the Hollywood Henderson book from the early 80s. And he mentions how he was doing cocaine on the sidelines in an asthma inhaler. He was inhaling cocaine. And the NBC cameras caught him doing it and had no clue, just thought it was an asthma inhaler. And here's a guy that hit rock bottom. And then all of a sudden, what happens in about 2000? Well, he got clean, and then he was helping kids and drug addicts and helping them get clean and all this. Then in 2000, the guy wins the lottery, like 14 million in the lottery. Wow. And he ends up using a lot of those funds to help people even more. So that's just a great Super Bowl memory for me.
Yeah.
As far as a Steelers Super Bowl memory too, of course, Santonio, of course, James Harrison. But I've got to tell you, I think the biggest for me was watching Alan Faneca pull and Willie Parker untouched going 75. And I yell, and it's a record, because I know the records. I'm the annoying guy. I'm the Cliff Clavin at Super Bowl parties that have to point out the records. But watching, because that was such a big deal for me. First one as an adult, and I endured that one in 95.
Yeah.
You know what? I love that Super Bowl too. There's something about that Super Bowl. I love watching the highlights. I love watching what could have went right. I'm one of the few people that don't blame Neil O'Donnell as a guy that was cheating in that game. He wasn't paid off, but that's something that we like to think to make us feel better. If Ernie Mills doesn't get hurt in that game, they don't lose that game.
Could be a different story for sure.
Yeah, because Corey Holliday's not running the wrong route.
Yeah,
Neil's still screwed up.
Right.
He panicked.
Can't throw the ball, but
I mean, he screwed up, but So, but when Daniel read all caps, Dave Schofield won't yell at you at this. He yells at all caps, but he's not going to yell at Faneca was absolutely awesome. And he was. And Faneca, when he pulled, that was a masterful job. I mean, you could have given the MVP to Faneca.
Yeah, you could have. You absolutely could have.
For that play alone.
Yeah.
But there's so many things to talk about. If you watch these highlights or the America's games and watching all of the stuff with the Steelers, there's so much to know. And I'm going to tell you one more thing. If you don't know this, if you go back to Super Bowl IX at halftime, I don't know if the Rams and Patriots changed that. I don't know if they were 0-0 at halftime, but for the longest time, Super Bowl IX had the lowest score at halftime ever, and it was 2-0.
Yeah.
And do you know how they got the score?
It was how they got the safety.
It was a safety. Yeah, it was a safety.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I can't remember. I actually just watched this on Twitter like an hour ago. The highlight from that, but I can't remember who scooped it or who made the sack.
Well,
it was a backup, wasn't it?
No.
Backup linebacker? Because Andy Russell got hurt in that game, didn't he?
No, it was the great Dwight White.
Oh, Dwight White. Yeah.
But the best thing about Dwight White to know, for 6 days, he was lying in a New Orleans hospital, lost 18 pounds because he was so sick, got out of the hospital Sunday morning, goes to the game, plays, and what happens? He scores the first ever points for the Pittsburgh Steelers in a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. And Franco, I think, had a 2-play drive in the second half to score a touchdown. He did put together all the yards on the drive. Yeah.
As great as Franco always was, in Super Bowls, he was even better. Oh, my goodness.
And is it still an NFL record for lowest rushing yards and total yards allowed in that Super Bowl for the Steelers defense?
I believe so. They gave up hardly anything. I did my Super Bowl memories the other day.
In that game.
Yeah, and the passing yard. I think they got 98 total yards in that game.
Yeah, I can't remember.
If I'm not mistaken, that's something we would have to look.
It was right around 100 or something like that. It's incredible. I think
Could-
for me, my favorite memory, like actual Steelers Super Bowls that I've watched, I have to go back to 05, and I have to kind of agree with you on the Willie Parker touchdown, because it was just an explosive play. It broke the game open for Pittsburgh a little bit because it was a grind. That was a grinding Super Bowl, and that you felt like the Steelers the defense kind of had it in the bag after that play. But it wasn't a great game from the offense. So that was the biggest one that stood out. And obviously then the reverse touchdown pass to Hines Ward stands out to me too. And the first, that feeling as a young fan, I think I was 11 years old at that point, for my team to win the Super Bowl, that feeling, I've been chasing that feeling ever since. Got it one other time, was heartbroken in a Green Bay Super Bowl. But those stand out to me as my favorite memories. And then I guess if I had to pick like a secondary thing, just sitting back on the couch at my friend's house, and there was like 40 people there, and literally my family was the only people rooting for the Steelers against the Cardinals, and watching Ben Roethlisberger take them down the field on that final drive to score the go-ahead to Santonio Holmes, and all the angst that went with that, the early holding call that pushed him back, and you're like, oh, here we go. And then the Santonio Holmes with the defender slipping and falling and turning upfield and getting it down to like the 7-yard line. Just the agony and elation that you had in that drive. So incredible. So those would be my top memories from Super Bowls.
That drive was tremendous.
Yeah.
And you know what? I look at that Super Bowl, and sometimes I think I was afraid they scored too quick, because the way Larry Fitzgerald was playing in that game, you were afraid that they were just going to run down with a 2-play drive and score, because he was just piercing the heart of the Steelers over the middle. Polamalu and Ike, and it wasn't he was just that good.
Yeah,
he was that good. And here's the thing about that Super Bowl. Any other Super Bowl, you just said you're the only Steeler fans watching it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you look at the map today.
Yeah.
Most people, no one ever wants to root for Philly, but they all are, because they're rooting against the Chiefs.
Right.
And that Super Bowl was the same way, not because they were rooting against the Steelers as much. It's because who isn't going to root for Kurt Warner?
Right.
And who's not going to root for Larry Fitzgerald?
Cinderella Cardinals team. Exactly.
Yeah. I would have been rooting for them.
Yeah.
Heck, I would have been rooting for Seattle in that other Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm not rooting for, heck, I would have been rooting for Los Angeles, the Rams in Super Bowl 14. My parents were at that game, but not when the Steelers are in it. That's the thing. So one thing I'm going to say about that Seattle Super Bowl, I kind of feel for Kansas City fans a little bit, and I'll tell you why. Because every time I bring up that Super Bowl, well, Steelers should have never won that game. That's a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
They would have won that game anyways. They did get some calls. They got some calls their way. We're not giving it back. But
right.
Roethlisberger, they're like, well, Roethlisberger didn't get in the end zone. Yeah, but it wasn't 4th down.
Right.
They were 3rd and inches, and they were even less inches. Yeah, Ben didn't score. I get it. Raul said Ben didn't score. They could have won for it on 4th down, or they take the 3. They won 21-10.
Yeah.
But the refs didn't help. The refs did not help with that play from Randall L. to Hines Ward. In a play, I like to say this, in a play they practiced on Friday.
Right.
And Bill Hillgrove, that's his great line. They didn't help with that. They didn't help with Willie Parker.
Yeah.
And exactly. The Steelers really could have had that whole game changes if Ben doesn't throw the changes in history. If Ben on the 2-yard line doesn't throw an interception to Kelly.
Right.
Aiden.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, if that happens, then it's 28-10 or 28-3 or something like that. And it's just a complete blowout, and there's no question whatsoever.
Right. But, and nobody talks about how good the Steelers defense was in that game. it's all about the calls and Roethlisberger's poor performance, and they still win. But the defense was lights out, and Ike Taylor has an interception in that game, and that was as rare as can be out of 24.
That's as rare as Ben having a bad throwing game, And,
sure.
And the thing is, if Ben completes that one pass and it doesn't, I mean, ifs and buts, I know, but it's not an interception the other way, then no one's really talking about Ben having a bad game.
Sure. Here, let me ask you this: worst meltdown in a big spot from a quarterback. What was it? Neil O'Donnell in the Super Bowl, or was it Ben Roethlisberger in the 2004 AFC Championship against the Patriots with his 3 interceptions?
Okay, so I was at that game.
Okay.
I was not at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I can't really say. Are you saying Ben's 3 interceptions? Was that against?
It was against the Patriots in the AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh too, because that was the year that the Steelers ended the Patriots winning streak. That was the longest in NFL history.
I was there too, and I was there the next week when they beat undefeated Philadelphia.
Right. And they went 15-1 and secured the 1 seed, so they had home field advantage, and it felt like you were finally going to get past Tom Brady's Patriots. Well, it didn't happen, and Ben Roethlisberger, I think Rodney Harrison had 2 picks of Roethlisberger in that game, one for 6, I think. So, and then he threw a third one too. So
I don't consider it a meltdown.
Sure.
With Ben, he's a rookie.
Yeah.
I don't
in a big spot.
In a big spot, and the Steelers didn't have the best week the week before. They got bailed out by the New York Jets kicker named Doug Bryan, who missed 2 crucial fourth quarter field goals. I will probably say, I've got to say Mark Malone. Excuse me, not Mark Malone. Mark Malone's saying O'Donnell for sure. I'm saying O'Donnell for sure, and I'm agreeing with Mark. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and say O'Donnell is, you realize he threw 2 interceptions to Larry Brown, almost threw a third to Larry Brown early in that game.
That one was dropped, right, by Brown, or was it tipped away? I can't remember.
I can't remember. I think it was dropped.
Yeah.
But I will say this. Maybe O'Donnell had the worst performance for the Steelers in that game, but there was a lot that I didn't like from the Steelers in that game too. The defense did their best to shut it down. The offense just wasn't clicking whatsoever at all in that game. And O'Donnell got sacked a lot in that game too. I don't think, and again, and I'm not going to rip on anybody for saying that they believe he was paid off. Believe what you believe. I don't have a problem with it. The thing is, I can't see O'Donnell. I see O'Donnell choking in that game.
Yeah.
And because really, you can't make that much money from the Gambino family. You know, that what a Super Bowl win is going to make you.
Yeah.
I'm always going to believe that, but nobody ever agrees with me on that. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But as someone who was 2 years old when that Super Bowl happened and totally unaware of anything having to do with football, I
just watched it last week again.
Okay. Yeah. I'll probably side with you. I would have a hard time believing anybody's rigging a game against their own team like that, but I don't know, I guess.
Those balls to Larry Brown, I mean, it looked like they were thrown to him. I think Neil's thrown off of his back foot. Neil panicked.
Yeah. That's
the problem. He choked and he panicked. I just don't think he was bought out. You're going to go ahead and no one's ever going to agree with me because it's good to have the conspiracy theories. Everybody likes to have the conspiracy theories, but I just Corey, like I said, if Ernie Mills doesn't get hurt, Corey Holliday's not in that game, and Ernie Mills is on the field.
Yeah.
Another thing that hurt them in that game was Gosh, what's it? He just passed away. Johnson.
Oh,
The
I can't
first
remember.
round pick from
Yeah, starts with a C, doesn't it? I can't remember.
Charles Johnson.
Charles, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he just passed away about 4-5 years ago, and he was the first round pick in '94.
Yep.
He got hurt, I don't know, right before the playoffs. And if they had a full complement of receivers, I think it's kind of a different story in that game. But what a lot of people also forget about in that game is on 2nd and 1, on 3rd and 1, and on 4th and 1, they run the same play to basically Bam Morris, and he can't get a yard.
Wow.
And
yeah,
that kind of changes the game too. I mean, we're never getting it back.
Right.
But they could have won. They really could have won that football game.
Yeah, it's, and I look at the Green Bay Super Bowl too, and you think of all the different ways they could have won that game if a ball bounces better their way, or if the defense shows up in the first half for any length of time. There's some big plays in that one that could have gone either way. So,
and I'm going to apologize for something I've been saying for 15 years now. I talk about how bad Rashard Mendenhall got clocked and how nobody is going to not fumble there. I watched it again. It wasn't that bad.
Sure.
The problem is Clay Matthews got a helmet on the ball.
Right.
So that's a hard thing to do, but I thought he just got absolutely destroyed.
I've always felt it was more on the offensive line not picking up Clay Matthews than it was on Mendenhall, because he gets hit in the backfield like half a second after he gets the ball, if I'm remembering it correctly. So
the biggest problem, though, one of the reasons that Mendenhall's so sore about it, then Mendenhall after the whole assassination of Osama bin Laden kind of came out and made some comments that pissed a lot of Steeler fans off and a lot of people off. And Mendenhall's kind of a dick. I mean, he's just, and I'm allowed to say that because I hear it on network TV now. So I don't think that's
this is just thing. YouTube. We're good.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to cancel me from YouTube for saying that he's a dick, but he kind of is. But this is the Q&A. Could we get some questions? Because the best thing that I've got out here is, and I've got to bring this up because this is probably one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever seen, but it made me chuckle because I'm Brian Anthony Davis. The hope that I can't remember who said it, but it's the hope that Taylor Swift gave Travis Kelce the clap last night. And here it is, Paul Havana, Raul Havana, Raul. I would that affect him for this game?
I don't know.
I would think Taylor would be a lot more clean than that.
I think, I've predicted it that Travis Kelce's done after this year. I don't know if he actually is or not, but I think that he's going to score 2 touchdowns, win MVP, and he's going to have a hard time sticking around next year. That's my prediction.
Why should he come back? Especially
if it's the truth.
I got to bring this up. Look, if that's the real Neil O'Donnell, you've got to know this. I have been sticking up for you for 30 years, and I will continue to do it. But I would love that if that was Neil O'Donnell, the real Neil O'Donnell. That is
Please
awesome.
Be the real Neil O'Donnell. Thank you for tuning in and joining in. Oh, man. He's been looking for it. He's been looking for his opportunity to stand up.
We've got Mark Malone, so we might as well get Neil O'Donnell on
here.
Look your dill holes. That just made made the Q&A Hall of Fame here.
That's fantastic. One of the boys. Is this Mark? Is this Marky?
This is Marky D. And
and
also, I'm going to say something else about this.
Yeah,
not just one of the boys. Steel Curtain Network staff member, once again, not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday, Mark Davison is back on the Steel Curtain Network on
Marky D,
Tuesdays.
welcome back.
So welcome back. How about that? So yeah, this is Marky D. What day will you arrive in Ireland? Which pub we meeting at? I'm not going.
Yeah, I don't know.
It kills me.
I don't think
to
I'm
not be
going either. That's an expensive trip.
My wife just told me, yeah, I don't think we're going.
Yeah. The draft, right? We're gonna all be at the draft in 2026.
Yeah, we will be. Marky D told me the other day on the phone that he'll be at the draft. Jeff is going, and Jeff doesn't leave. Jeff doesn't leave Maryland.
Jeff doesn't leave the house unless he's got to take his kids to practice, right?
Yeah. So I got to tell you, I mean, we are going to find some way to be at that draft.
Yeah,
not exactly right in the heart of it, but there. No, you're not here just so you don't get fined. You're here because you love us, and you know that, Davison.
Right. You couldn't stay away. Couldn't stay away.
And here's the other announcement: Mark Davis' son. I have an announcement to make. I had an indiscretion in Australia years ago. So Marky D is my boy.
That's great.
He's like a son to me.
Like a son to you.
Yeah. So
here's a question from Vinny Aguakun, and part of what we probably wanted to talk about in this show today. And he says, when will the Steelers get back to a Super Bowl? 10 years? I was going to ask you, Brian, if the question ever came up, does Mike Tomlin ever get back to a Super Bowl as the Steelers head coach? But that's let's answer this one. When do the Steelers get back? Is it in the next decade? Do they get back under Mike Tomlin? What you got?
I actually think they do get back with Mike Tomlin, and I'm going to give you some hell, Jeremy, just because I love to do it. You're like, you wrote a laughing emoji or something at, who was it? Was that FanDuel that wrote that they think the Steelers get in there the next 5 years twice?
Yeah.
And, you know.
And the picture was of Justin Fields like he was this predetermined savior to take them there. And I don't know if I see that. But that's why it was more of the laughing emoji is like, okay, so we're predicting here the Steelers get back to the Super Bowl in the next 5 years. And the lead picture is the quarterback that's not even on the roster right now. I don't know if that's how that plays.
If they get back to the Super Bowl, it is because of Omar Khan. And it is because Mike Tomlin lets assistant coaches run a scheme.
Sure.
And would be because Rooney lets them do it. And I think Rooney's the biggest problem whatsoever with this team. I don't think Rooney has to sell the team. I don't think that's anything. Yeah. You know what I want for not Mike Rooney, excuse me, for Art Rooney II, because I think he's a dear guy. I think he's a good dude. But I think he needs to have a Christmas Carol type dream. Sure. Ghost of Steelers past, ghost of Steeler present, ghost of Steeler future. Yeah. And realize that the penny pinching stuff with the assistant coaches has got to stop. Yeah. But I don't think in today's NFL, I don't think there's a lot of teams that aren't that far off. And the Steelers had some guys last year that could have been a Super Bowl team if they did things smarter and better. They might have lost in this Super Bowl, but they were trending where they were in the conversation. Then we've got Vinny again. Do we actually win a Super Bowl with Watt and Minka?
Yeah.
I'm never going to say never. Probably, Vinny, don't bet your house on it. But I'm never going to say never, because this is not a team like the Raiders where you seem like the Jags. You're constantly starting over. Right. And the Jags 2 years ago looked like, oh my gosh, they're a playoff team. They're on the verge.
Right. They had that incredible comeback against the Chargers to move on in the playoffs, and you thought they'd be the next big thing this last year. So,
and then they just absolutely fall apart. I think the thing I don't think that is broken is the Blitzburg culture.
Mm.
And it's you don't know when that elite quarterback is coming and comes in, Tommy. And
Yeah.
I get it, but there's still the possibility. I think this team, if they build around Justin Fields and have a scheme around Justin Fields, that they can go far in the playoffs. I'm not saying that they could win it all. I'm just saying they can. If they do that, I think they're a lot better than a first round exit.
Sure.
They were imposters this year.
Yeah. Well, especially after the Bengals game, when the offense just fell apart, and when the mesh of Wilson and Smith seemingly devolved into a mess instead of a mesh. And I think that, this iteration of the Steelers, the defense wasn't quite as good as we were hoping it was going to be. And then the offense, with the failures down the stretch, it just kind of fell apart for them. But I do agree with you, like your premise, that this was a really good team, better than a first round exit team until things kind of fell apart. So I don't know if the Steelers can fix all their problems in one off season, as far as roster holes go, but I think that they have the front office in place that can do it. To your point about Art Rooney II, does he have a football operations guy that's handling like the day-to-day of football operations? Does he have a guy that handles hires? I mean, it seems like he's the last stop, right? And I wonder if a guy like him would be better suited to getting a football mind in the operations side of things and allow him to do that work and just sign the checks.
Well, I don't believe he completely does. I know he has people around him, and I'm not saying he's a dumb guy. He's just kind of set in his ways, the way he wants to do stuff with the assistant coaches. And they kind of believe like less is more as far as the assistant coaches. My biggest problem is letting these guys go ahead and stay on the team as an assistant coach when they're done with them, because they still have years left on their contract.
Right.
And I will tell you, and this is an absolute fact, I cannot prove it because I cannot bring my source to let me go ahead and say this, but this comes from inside the organization. Mike Tomlin had to basically go and beg to have them fire Matt Canada.
Yeah.
So for anybody saying that Rooney was kind of praised for that, because he overruled Tomlin, and that's not what happened. Tomlin said, look, it's kind of get rid of me if you're not going to get rid of this guy.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that happened. And so, and Rooney was a guy that he said, let me get back to you, and came back that day and said, all right, you're my guy.
Yeah.
And he's gone.
I trust you. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's that. We'll bring up Claude. I've had a chance to meet Claude in person.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Claude came up to me in a restaurant a couple years ago. We live in the same town.
Nice.
And he and his lovely wife, very, very beautiful people. I got my picture taken with him. What a nice guy Claude is. I will tell you this. He says, you're an optimistic guy.
Yeah.
I've seen this. I think we look at the Steelers as fans, and I'm always going to say, you fan your way. I'm never going to tell you how to fan, but I look at it a whole lot different. That I think the Steelers are usually a lot closer to breaking out than they are to breaking down. Because I'm tired of 9-8, 10-7 in the first round exits too. And I get that, but I kind of, I think their biggest problem, I think Mike Tomlin's biggest problem, I think Art Rooney's biggest problem is the S word, stubborn. And I wish, I want everybody to have that Charles Dickens dream and, and realize that, hey, look, You don't have to be that set in your ways. But there's situations where this team could have won a good bit over the last few years.
Yeah.
But they didn't, and that's what we're going to hold on to, and that's what we're going to be ticked off about. Now, this is what always gets me in trouble, Jeremy. People get mad at me when I say this. Don't you think the Detroit Lions fans would like to be us? Don't you think the Cleveland Browns fans? And I know Detroit had a great season.
Yeah.
But do you think anybody's happy there?
No,
I live
for them too.
I live near Baltimore.
Yeah.
Those fans are worse than Steelers fans.
Oh,
they are so quick to turn on everybody, including Lamar.
They're stark raving mad.
Yeah, they're so bandwagon. It's not funny. The thing about the Steeler fans, they're not bandwagon. They stick with the team. They're just going to complain about them, and there's nothing wrong with complaining about them.
Yeah.
The only thing I get upset with Steeler fans with is that they get upset with me and Dave and Jeff and anybody else for presenting the other side of the coin, saying it's not as bad as you think. But that's all how everybody thinks. But yeah, I am an optimistic guy. I don't think I could get through life without being optimistic.
Yeah, same. It's the only way to approach the day to day, in my opinion. But I think I look back at the 2010s where the Steelers had Roethlisberger and these great offensive weapons, and those are the years I am more I guess disappointed in not having won another championship than where the Steelers are at right now, because they had the quarterback and they had the offense to play in today's modern NFL. And Mike Tomlin let that offense do its thing. He wasn't holding back because he had Ben Roethlisberger. And I don't know about you, Brian, but I look back and I think that the Steelers' best chance to win a Super Bowl was actually not 2016 when they went to the AFC Championship game and lost to the Patriots. That Patriots team was vastly superior to them in most regards. They had a better defense that year even, and Tom Brady was doing Tom Brady things. The year that the Steelers blew it was in 2015 when they beat the Cincinnati Bengals in that wild card game, and then they had a shot against Denver. And I'm not saying they blew it, actually. That's poor wording on my part. I think that they were injury luck away from going to another Super Bowl because they already beat that Denver Broncos team earlier that season, and they almost beat them with Fitzgerald Toussaint at running back, no Antonio Brown, and Ben Roethlisberger playing with half a right arm. And if Roethlisberger's healthy, so in reality, it was Vontaze Burfict killed the Steelers' postseason hopes by taking out Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, and then I can't remember who it was that hit Roethlisberger in that game and messed his shoulder up, but Ben was not healthy going into Denver either. So
I think that was perfect too.
Yeah, I think it was perfect. I think he hit all three players, but
however,
but that was their best chance because the the Patriots were not a good team that year. The Broncos knocked them off with that defense. The Patriots were playing over their skis getting to an AFC Championship game that year. I think the Steelers were a better team if they were healthy that year. And that was the year that the Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell were first team All-Pros at their positions. They were taking the NFL over at that point in their careers. That's the year that I'm most disappointed in.
All right, let me put on my tinfoil hat here.
Okay.
And there's something else that you are not noticing from that game.
Okay.
The NFL, just like the NFL, in an hour is going to do everything they can to have the Chiefs three-peat because they want it. The NFL was doing everything they could to go ahead
to a Super Bowl,
to get Peyton Manning to win that Super Bowl, the Broncos. Yeah. They were going to, and when you watch that game in the fourth quarter, Peyton Manning was down, got back up. He was down, gave himself up, got back up, and ran for a first down.
Yeah.
And they did not call it.
They didn't blow the whistle. I remember that now. Yeah.
And so I'm not saying that if D'Angelo Williams and Le'Veon Bell, if D'Angelo Williams and Le'Veon Bell were in that game, they might have a better chance.
Yeah.
If Antonio Brown's in that game, they might have a better chance. But them being out hurt the team more. And this is all conspiracy theory stuff. But that's a harder team to sell in the Super Bowl if you don't have running backs, you don't have wide receivers. That's I'm going a little crazy, but they wanted Peyton Manning to win that game, and that call was so egregious because they had a punt.
Yep.
Not saying that, I mean, lightning could have struck again, but I don't think it does. I think the Steelers go to Denver and win that game.
Yeah.
And they did everything to do it. I thought they had forces against them because that's a much bigger deal saying that Peyton Manning is going to the Super Bowl again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Then the team that had all their superstars injured at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, but if you go back and watch the fourth quarter of that game, you'll be sick.
Right. Yeah. I still, to this day, I'll say that the 2015 Steelers were the best Steelers overall of the 2010s. And even better than the 2016 unit that beat Matt Moore and one other backup quarterback on the way to the AFC Championship against the Patriots that year. They just weren't as good that season. But
I gotta say one more thing.
Overcome it.
I gotta say one more thing, Jeremy. Antonio Brown was hit so hard in that game, and people like my dad claim that was the downfall of Antonio Brown, even though Antonio had ego problems and like Troy Polamalu wanted to beat his butt. Way before that, after he signed that new contract, Ryan Clark was like, "You guys don't know what you just did. You just made a deal with the devil, and the devil's he's gonna
bite back eventually."
But the thing about it is Antonio Brown was hit so hard by Burfict and Pac-Man in that game that, trust me, I don't think he's playing in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, he wasn't coming back. No.
I mean, they were hoping to get him back. I don't know if he was coming back. I mean, for the Super Bowl, yeah, I think he's back for a Super Bowl because then that's 3 weeks of rest on a concussion. But I don't know.
Yeah, was it because they didn't have the same concussion protocols back then, though, that they do now, right? Where you have to pass through all the specific steps. It wasn't as involved, was it? I can't remember.
Oh, no, it was involved back then, too.
Okay. I can't remember if it was by then that they had all the protocols in place where you had to reach certain milestones throughout the week before you could even play. So
he had milestones then, too. And I think it's very similar it was very similar in 2015, and that being actually 2016, but the 15 season. I think it was very similar to what it is. And in fact, I can honestly say I feel like guys get out of the concussion protocol a lot quicker now.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Than what it was back then. I'm not saying that it's more lax, but I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just like, it seemed like back then that one was going to last forever.
Yeah. Yeah. It really did. It was tough. It was tough. And, we as Steelers fans, we sit back and we kind of feel like we're pretty far away, but as a general rule, but I do think that there are still foundations in place that allow the Steelers to build back quickly and get into contention. Now, it's about going out and winning the games when they matter. That's what they haven't been able to do to this point. So we'll see down the road. Brian, as we try to wrap this thing up here and get ready for a Super Bowl game, any final thoughts that you'd like to provide to us here on the Steelers Q&A? Not a lot of questions today, but that's okay. Everybody's Super Bowl minded, ready for the big game. Any final thoughts about the big game coming up or Steelers in general? What you got?
enjoy this game, but let me go back to the Steelers real quick. If you look at the Eagles last year, the Eagles were a lot like what the Steelers were this year. And things weren't going right. And they made a great move in free agency. And they changed everything. I'm telling you that the way the NFL is right now, I know you need an elite quarterback. We saw that early. There's some people questioning whether, and I'm not trying to open up a can of worms here, but how elite is Jalen Hurts? And I don't think you have to be absolutely elite to win the Super Bowl, because you have elite quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, that can't make it to the Super Bowl either, and they're elite. So all I'm saying is that there's different ways to construct a roster, and the way that Philadelphia drafts and the way that Philadelphia brings in free agents and makes trades, you've got to keep that as a model for you. Yeah. And you've got a guy in-house that worked under that system and under that GM. So, and John's saying it's a reach.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you've got a guy that was under the tutelage of Howie Roseman. And this is, if they can model it like that, I'm not saying they're going back. They're not going back next year. But for everybody that thinks that they've got to start over, completely dismantle everything and start over, I think that's even more of a reach.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with John where it comes to coaches, and a modern staff that has modern approaches to how football is played these days. But I don't think that they're too far off from some of these, from a team like the Eagles when it comes to star talent. Maybe they need to add some more depth and improve weak areas, but I don't think the roster is as far off of Philadelphia as maybe some would, as it sounds like John would, because they have star talent on that defense, especially. They have guys, I think, that can cultivate into that on offense. It's about the offensive line. It's about finding the right system for the offense to run, the right quarterback. And I do agree with you. You don't necessarily need an elite quarterback to get there, but he's got to be elite at something. And the Eagles have really done a good job of building an offense around Jalen Hurts. And you add Saquon Barkley to that, that makes them an elite rushing team that can do things based off of that. And that's how you get there. I'm
going to bring this up real quick.
Yep.
Can we play a modern RPO offense like we used to in high school? LOL.
Yeah.
Neil, that's where I go back to. I'm not going to dwell on this, but I'm going to agree with you. And all I'm going to say is this is where the stubbornness comes into play.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to evolve. And we saw this years ago with the great Chuck Noll, got really stubborn and did not change with times. And that bit him. You can't live in 1976 and you can't live in 2008.
Yeah,
you just can't. So with that being said, it all comes down to maybe having that come to Jesus moment. And that's where Charles Dickens comes in.
Right. Yep, absolutely. All right. Good stuff, Brian. Thanks for joining me on this earlier edition of the Steelers Q&A on a Sunday. Everybody go enjoy the big game. I'm rooting for the Eagles. I think the Chiefs are going to win, though. I just hope it's a clean game. We'll see how it all plays out. But until next time, Steeler fans, we hope you have a good week. And the Steelers Q&A will be back next time. Have a good one.